Hey guys, it's Libby and welcome to my wrap up for the months of August and September. I didn't actually do an August wrap up because I was in the midst of editing my Merchant of Venice Bard Book Club video, as well as my I lived like a Jane Austen character for a day video, which is on my costuming channel, and I figured you guys would be more interested in seeing those than just another monthly wrap up. However, I have kind of played myself on this one because now I can't totally remember what I read at the beginning of August, but I guess we'll find out. In these 2 months, I read 6 novels, 2 works of nonfiction, and 1 work of graphic semi-fiction. And we're gonna start off with some romance. So my favorite romance novelist who is currently writing is Tessa Dare. Her next book was supposed to come out in August 2020. It has been continually getting delayed, I think because Tessa's had some of her own health problems, not related to COVID, and I know she also has kids, so her kids were suddenly living with her, and that slowed down the writing process. So it's over a year later, and we still haven't gotten the what's it called? The bride bet, and I was so sad, so I went around looking for something else to scratch that itch, so I decided to read some Lisa Kleypas. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. She is another like big name Regency romance novelist. And I was kind of just going based off of like what was rated well on Goodreads, but I unwittingly selected a series which actually has a very similar structure to the quartet Tessa Dare is currently working on. So it's a 4-book series about 4 ladies who are friends due to the fact that they are all like strange. They have various reasons why they are unmarriageable, and it's about them getting married to, of course, rich, handsome, often titled men. And the series takes place over 1 year. So we start with Secrets of a Summer Night, which is about Angela and Simon? Annabelle and Simon. I was close. It's always fun to see if I can actually remember the names of the protagonists in these romance novels. So I thought this was fine. So Angela is impoverished, and like this season is sort of the last time that her parents can afford to have her participate in the London season. So if she doesn't get married now, actually maybe she doesn't have a dad anymore. Yeah, I think she is a single parent household. So if she doesn't get married now, she's gonna have to go become a governess or something unpleasant. And she's not really getting any marriage bites, but she does get an offer to be Mr. Simon Hunt's mistress. And she's really trying to angle that. You know, she's actually trying to fend him off at the beginning because he seems like an asshole. But eventually she's like, okay, how can I angle this into marriage? I thought this was decent. I do feel like I need to make a video about romance novels and what makes them work. Because I feel like oftentimes the problem lies in the 3rd act, and having your 3rd act tie in appropriately with the rest of the story. Yeah, the 3rd act, the big twist here, didn't really have anything else to do with the rest of the plot, so we didn't really have a very successful arc. And then in terms of the like witty repartee, it was fine. I'll tell you, for this series was written between it was written in the 2000s. I think the first one was like 2004 and we end in 2007. So the whole consent situation is not the worst, but it's definitely not great. This is why I don't read romance novels from the 80s. It's all very much about rape, and I understand why, but I also don't want to read that. So yeah, I think I would maybe be willing to try some more recent Lisa Kleypas, but yeah, I gave it 3 stars to Secrets of a Summer Night, and then that is followed up by It Happened One Autumn, which is about, oh my god, I have absolutely no idea. Okay, so the man his title is Westcliff, his first name is Marcus, and the girl is named Cassandra. Nope, it's Lillian. I could not have been more wrong. They both have an A in them. So in the previous novel, Annabelle's problem was that she was poor. Lillian's problem is that she is American. Okay, and she, her mom has brought Lillian and her younger sister over to marry them off because they have made a bunch of, they've got all those American dollar bills due to their father's soap business or something, and they're at this like Westcliff house party, and Westcliff and Lillian, this is a hate to love story, seem to hate each other because he's very serious and straight-laced and she's American. But of course, cannot deny the burning passion or something. I also gave this a 3 stars. Consent was not everything I could have wished. This story, I would actually say the plot arc for this worked a little bit better than in the previous book in the series, but the rest of it was a little bit more cliched. Then we get to Devil in Winter, which is where I stopped. So I DNF'd this book in the middle and did not go on to read the 4th. So this is about Alice and Wesley. Is that a name? Okay, Evangeline and Sebastian. Not enough romance novel heroines are named Alice. I think maybe it wasn't very popular in the 19th century. So this book was admittedly a hard sell because Sebastian is basically the bad guy in the previous book. And I was like, okay, we're gonna do a pivot somehow in this one. And actually in the first couple of chapters, we do a pivot, and I was buying it, but then they start out, they elope. Sebastian is about to run out of money, and Evangeline is loaded. The reason she hasn't gotten married yet is because she's extremely socially awkward and has a stutter. Her father is also the somewhat disreputable owner of a casino. Evangeline is trying to escape from her horrible family, so she decides to elope with Sebastian and give him some money. And the elopement seems to be going okay, but then they come back to London, and man is he an asshole. And I was like, I don't want to read this. So I did end up giving Devil in Winter 2 stars. When I DNF books, sometimes I rate them and sometimes I don't. So if I feel like I'm setting a book aside for now, but I want to come back to it later, or if like I personally am just in a reading slump, but man, the light is crazy today, then I will often not rate a book, or like if I was just bored, then I will usually not rate a book. But if I DNF a book because I dislike it, then I will usually give it a rating. So those are my thoughts on the Wallflower series. If you think Lisa Kleypas has written some more recent things that I might like better, I'm happy to hear about that. But this may just be the end of me and Lisa. Next, I read a book which might actually also be considered a romance novel. I know this has been a book that it perhaps intentionally is sort of blurring the boundaries between literary and genre fiction, which is something I really appreciate. You've probably heard of it. It's Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is set in contemporary Ireland, and we first meet our characters, whose names I remember, Connell and Marianne, when they are in high school, and it follows them for their last years of high school and the beginning of their early adulthood. Connell is an extremely cool kid in school, but he's also very smart. So he's not your classic dumb jock. He's a jock who's also like getting straight A's. And Marianne is very much the weird girl in the school. Her family situation is very messed up. Her father has died, and her mother and brother, none of the 3 of them like the others very much. And the novel follows the ever-changing, complex, and often ambiguous relationship between Connell and Marianne. So they start sleeping with each other, but they never sort of establish themselves as having a relationship. Their sexual relationship is like basically a secret from everybody else. It often seems unclear to them, and then to other people once they find out, whether they are not friends, boyfriend and girlfriend? What's happening here? This is very much a novel that's focused on poor communication. I know some people don't like that, but I do want to stress that this is not a novel about miscommunication. It's not like someone accidentally mishears a sentence. That's normally not a great driver of plot. But it's about like how it is hard to tell other people what you want, and it's even harder to know what you want. I gave this book 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think it is getting a Netflix adaptation, which I am interested in watching. One of the things I quite liked is just how like smart Connell and Marianne are. One of the things that, you know, some people may have a problem with is that these two seem way more intelligent than like a 17-year-old would normally be. They incorporate like wordplay based on a Martin Luther King speech into their everyday conversation. So maybe not the most realistic, but extremely entertaining for me. I also thought it was interesting how this book looked at BDSM in the second half of the book. It explores sort of how people feel about BDSM and how that changes based on the partner that they're with and what their partner is interested in doing, how BDSM in your sex life works with the rest of your relationship, and how do you know if you are like sexually interested in exploring BDSM or incorporating BDSM into your sex life, or do you maybe just want to like hit your partner? Then I read that work of graphic semi-fiction that I mentioned, which was Feelings, a Story in Seasons, which was Feelings, a Story in Seasons by Manjit Thapp. Manjit is primarily a multimedia illustrator, but she also has seasonal affective disorder and wrote this book based on her experiences with seasonal affective disorder. So my primary interest in this book was because I also have seasonal affective disorder, but I just recently had my first depressive episode of the winter, and I wanted to see somebody else's expression of their experience with it, especially because this is based on South Asian seasons. So instead of winter, spring, summer, autumn, I named all the seasons, it's summer, high summer, monsoon season, fall, winter, spring. And Manjita said that this is sort of inspired by her own emotional journey, but it's not intended to be like a memoir, which is why I called it semi-fiction. As for the art style, I wouldn't like immediately say that this is a style that I adore, but I did quite like the way it looked and the way she uses color, and in one case the way she sets up a 2-page spread as a game of chutes and ladders. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars. The reason it's not 5 is that it is very short. So you can read this in probably 15-20 minutes. There's not really that much space for that much interesting stuff to happen in. So if you were like hoping to learn more about the science involved with seasonal affective disorder or get like a really deep dive into what it's like, I don't think this is going to be satisfying for you. And also it is quite expensive. I think I paid like $12 or $13 for the ebook, which converts to about $1 per minute of reading, which is not really the financial transaction that I'm looking for in my reading life. So this is maybe a like get from the library type of book. Okay, then I feel a little bit bad counting this as a book, but hey, we all got Goodreads challenges to meet. So I listened to the audiobook of The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Kondo. I have already read this book a couple of years ago. Basically, in August, I decided I was going to give my house a real good clean, and I wanted to listen to something faintly related while I was doing that. So I just got the audiobook of Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which I have done a review of many years ago, if you want to check that out. You guys all already know what Kondo's deal is. I give it 4 stars. It's very nice. Love your things. Then next up is Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, which you probably heard about because it's fairly popular here on BookTube. So this is about, it's set in Mexico in the 1920s. We start in a very small town and we meet our heroine, Cassiopeia Tun, She lives with her grandfather and aunt and cousins, and her mother lives with her. Cassiopeia's father was indigenous, so when her mother married him, she had to like cut ties with her family. When Cassiopeia's father died, she and her mother ran out of money, and now they're kind of living like servants in their own family home. And then, what do you know, Cassiopeia accidentally resurrects a disempowered Mayan god, and it's feeding off her life force. So they have to like figure out a way to, you know, defeat his brother and to bring him fully back to life and travel all around Mexico for MacGuffins. So I absolutely loved the setting of this book and the way the world was written about. So obviously we're in the 1920s, really big transitional time. So like it's not just the urban-rural distinction that you know, we have in the modern world, but like the rural areas are still sort of living in the 19th century, and urban areas are very much living in the 20th century. So I really enjoyed going to these different places and seeing just how different life was. Unfortunately, I might have enjoyed the book more if it had just sort of been a camera panning around and there had been no characters in it. Cassiopeia didn't read as a very engaging character to me. For example, when she accidentally summons this god, she's sneaking around in her grandfather's room, sticks her hand into a box, feels a sharp pain, sees that there's bone in her finger, and then she like stumbles back. A giant naked man appears and is like, I am a god, we must go to the city to get these things, come with me, let's go now. And this is addressed in slightly more sentences than I'm about to tell you, but not a lot more. She basically goes, huh, okay. Which seems to me like a completely unrealistic reaction. I feel like her totally emotionless, okay, I guess we'll go, was not the correct writing choice. Penultimately, we've got the one book I have a physical copy of, that is How to Be a Victorian, A Dawn to Dusk Guide to Victorian Life by Ruth Goodman. This does mean that we have our next installment of Libby Doesn't Know How to Review Nonfiction. Don't know what to say when there's no characters or plot or setting. I liked this book a lot. I thought it was very interesting. It's packed with information. Daily life throughout history, there's always just so many more levels to it than you ever expect. Like, I learned so much about stoves, the sort of stove, the innovation in stove technology that was going on, and how that like completely revolutionized the way people cooked, and that means the way people lived. Absolutely recommend a motorcycle. Absolutely recommend How to Be a Victorian. I gave it 5 stars. And the last thing I read was the novel Precious Bane by Mary Webb. So I heard about Mary Webb as a sort of Thomas Hardy read-alike, and I was like, sign me up. So Mary Webb was writing in the early 20th century. This book is set in the era of the Napoleonic Wars. And in the same way that Thomas Hardy's work is associated with Wessex, Mary Webb's work is associated with Shropshire, which is a county in England near the Welsh border. One of the key similarities to Hardy, and one that I particularly enjoy, is how much it is about farming. So our main character is Prue Sarn. She lives on a farm she's late teens, early 20s. She lives on a farm with her parents and her brother, although her father dies very early on in the book. And then her brother, who is just a fascinating character. Not totally sure I want to say a good character. I would absolutely never want to hang out with him. But a very interesting person to read about. Her brother Gideon takes over sort of the running of the farm, and he is very focused on being rich. Not particularly selfishly. He doesn't sort of think about, you know, depriving other people of money, and he certainly wants his mother and his sister and the girl he has a crush on. What was her name? It was funny. Jancis beguiledy. You know, he wants them to also be able to enjoy the wealth, but he is extremely focused and willing to withstand any deprivation in order to turn a huge profit from his farm in as little time as possible so that they can move into town and get a nice house and have servants and be sort of part of the, if maybe not gentry, at least distinctly middle class. So the story of the farm is really what the plot of Precious Bane is focused on, but the story of Precious Bane is more about Prue's sort of pining attraction for Kester Woodsieves. Another reason this may be related to Thomas Hardy is that people have very silly names, who is an itinerant weaver. And he is also just the nicest man. So that's another Thomas Hardy element. There's several Thomas Hardy novels where someone is just the nicest man. And Prue is very despairing and sometimes maybe even a bit thick-headed about her possibilities, her romantic possibilities, because she has what they in the text call a hair-shotten lip, which we would in modern days call a cleft lip. And so because of this, people in the village, town, hamlet, farming community where she lives have some suspicions that she may be a witch. And there's a bigger witchcraft element with Jancis's father, Mr. Beguiledy, who is like a conjurer or a wizard. He's out there trying to do some old-fashioned arcane spells. This is not a fantasy novel. His spells are like based on English folk magic and don't appear to actually work. But he and his family are very much outsiders in their own community because of his profession. And then finally, it wouldn't be a Thomas Hardy read-alike if it didn't have like some luscious nature writing. So yeah, I really enjoyed Precious Bane. I plan to read more Mary Webb. I gave it 4 stars. Why did I only give it 4? I can't remember. Maybe there was something bad about it that I forgot. Anyway, that is all for this 2-month wrap-up. I hope you had a lovely time, and I will see you later.